as I said yesterday at the end of the show, we're washing away all the nonsense. We're washing away all the other stuff. It's time to focus on football.
Yeah.
Steelers and Bengals, Saturday at 4:30 on Festivus, for those that observe. Just like me. Will there be feats of strength? Will we be airing grievances, Chris Halicke?
If we're airing grievances, I just want them to be X's and O's grievances, not anything else. Listen, it's gonna be a challenge, man. It's gonna be a true challenge. The Bengals are playing really, really good football right now, man. They just are. Ever since the Steelers put up 421 yards on them, only 16 points, but ever since that game, Bengals are undefeated. Jake Browning looking like a legitimate NFL quarterback. This is a team, man. This is a team, and they're also facing a lot of adversity right now. They're without their franchise guy. They don't have Joe Burrow, and they're finding ways to win football games and put themselves, in a decent spot with a playoff picture. And man, if they win out, man, that's 11-6, and that's a really good shot at getting a playoff spot. So, it's not going to be easy, and as we learned today, for sure, it's Mason Rudolph at the helm.
Kenny Pickett's out. Mike Tomlin said it this afternoon. Now, an injury report hasn't come out, but I think we already know by now that that's really going to be the only one. The only other one I can think of as of right now is Isaac Seumalo, but he's played through injury for the last 2 games, so I'm expecting him to play. So we will see in an official capacity, I suppose, whatever the Steelers feel like dropping their injury report. Could be within the next half hour, 2 hour or so. But
yeah,
we do know right now, at least on the Bengals side. Oh, wow. Speaking of the devil, that's funny. Here's that injury report.
Oh.
Micah Fitzpatrick, of course, out. Kenny Pickett out. Trent Thompson also out. He did not practice all week with a neck injury. And Elijah Riley, he logged 2 full practices Wednesday and Thursday. He's questionable, but I would expect Elijah to play. As I got to talk to him on Monday and today, and it sounds like Riley's going to play. So I mentioned Seumalo. He actually did not practice Thursday, but he does not carry an injury designation. So Seumalo logged DNP, limited DNP, but does not have an injury designation for Sunday. So again, or Saturday, excuse me. So again, Kenny Pickett officially out. He practiced limited on Thursday. Trenton Thompson officially out, and Micah out. Questionable is Elijah Riley with his ankle. He has yet to come off of injured reserve, but that move is expected to be made as early as tomorrow. Could be Saturday morning. So.
But Eric Rowe in practice, what's been his role in practice?
He has been practicing with the first team as a safety. He confirmed that to me today. So as of right now, your safeties could look something in the realm of Eric Rowe, Elijah Riley, Miles Killebrew, and Patrick Peterson. That's where they're at in the back end right there.
Yeah. Now, granted, that puts the Steelers in a really, really rough spot in the middle of their defense, and I think that's why whenever any criticisms that come up with this football team, they've typically been more on the offensive side of the ball because, well, they're not having to deal with the same stuff that they're having to deal with on defense. You're talking about Cam Hayward was out for more than half the year. They lost Cole Holcomb, they lost Quan Alexander. Now they're down. And Michael Walker is pretty much now in the doghouse. So now you've got a trio of Blake Martinez, Miles Jack, and Mark Robinson manning the middle, behind Landon Roberts. Which, Landon Roberts in the position he was in behind, Cole Holcomb and kind of, 1A, 1 or 2A, 2B with Quan Alexander. That was a good role, really good role. And even then, Landon Roberts has played really well even after those injuries. But then you talk about, okay, well, now the safety position is decimated. They don't have Minka Fitzpatrick. They don't have Devontae Casey because of the suspension. They don't have Trenton Thompson, who's stepped up and looked pretty good. I mean, they're without their top 3 safeties right now. And Keanu Neal, I'm not even mentioning Keanu Neal. They're without their top 4 safeties right now. I mean, how often does that happen? I mean, that's a lot of adversity. However, Bengals dealing with their own adversity. Most important position on the field, quarterback. They're without Joe Burrow, not there. Hasn't been there. And now he's out. And since Joe Burrow went down, the Bengals are 3-1. And their only losses to the Steelers. And, the Steelers didn't blow them out of the water. They put up 421 yards and probably could have scored more points, should have scored more points than they did. But, the Bengals weren't shellacked that day either.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've looked really good. I mean, they beat the Jaguars. They've, I forget the other 2 teams they've beaten. The Vikings last week. I remember that one. You pulled up. I'm using my phone as a light because I'm not getting a lot of natural sunlight today. We got some rain here in North Texas. So, but the Bengals are dealing with their own adversity. Jamar Chase is going to be out this week. I mean, they're finding a way to do it, and I think that's the big difference right now. When we talk about all of the things going on with the Steelers right now, is the Steelers are not immune to having to deal with injuries right now. As bad as those injuries are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't have Kenny Pickett. Like, that's a big one too. But I think being without Joe Burrow is a little bit more of a big deal than being without Kenny Pickett. Joe Burrow's a MVP caliber quarterback that's been to a Super Bowl.
Yep. If you just felt your phone vibrate, that might be the notification pushed on the DK Pittsburgh Sports app with that injury update. Reminder: if you download our app, 100% free on the Apple App Store.
Free.
On the Google Play Store, the content's free as well. And that includes our DK Pittsburgh Sports, Steelers, Pirates, Penguins, Pitt, Penn State, all of our feeds. So anytime that injury report hits, I'm pushing the alert to you. Anytime Pitt has National Signing Day and they sign 19 out of 19 guys that committed to them, I'm pushing that alert to you. Anytime Tristan Jarry is in net, DK or Taylor are hitting that alert. Anytime the Pirates re-sign Kutch, Alex is hitting the alert. That's how we roll here. So 100% free to download app, 100% free to read content, a whole news feed of your favorite teams at the palm of your hand. No BS, no social network, no ads, no grandma posting about politics. It's a sports app. Think of it as your sports social media network.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm a little surprised, to be quite frank with you, that Isaac Seumalo doesn't have an injury designation. I thought for sure he would be at least designated in some way, shape, or form. But again, he has played through injuries over the last 2 games here, and he kind of has to at this stage. This offensive line, I know it hasn't played well, but they need a guy like him out on the field. But the safeties, I wrote about the safeties today. If you Hodge, that's your way. First off, that's not true. Hodge says, I read Terrell Austin said as Syracuse's head coach. First off, that's not true. Second off, they already hired their head coach, Fran Brown, out of the University of Georgia, who is absolutely killing it in this recruiting class. Absolutely killing it. Kyle McCord out of Ohio State transferring up. That's the best quarterback they've had ranked since Donovan McNabb. It's a new era of Orange football. But no, Terrell Austin will not be the head coach at Syracuse. But for the sake of Saturday's game, if I may, when I see Syracuse, I divert. That's what happens. My brain automatically clicks and it goes a different direction. But for Saturday's game, not having Kenny Pickett's obviously the big one, and it's going to be Mason Rudolph. Mitch Trubisky will be the backup. Now, Mike Tomlin said Kenny's out, but I don't think that's going to mean he has a possibility of being designated as the third quarterback. I do believe this is a true situation of him being out. And what that could do is open up the door for an Elijah Riley to come off of IR and be activated for this game. So there's going to be moves to be made, obviously, as there usually is leading up to the game. But not having Kenny Pickett, look, since that Bengals game that the Steelers won, the Bengals are undefeated and the Steelers are defeated. So Steelers have to find a way to turn that around, or else, quite frankly, the season's probably over. This is literally do or die time for this team.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Steelers are dealing with a lot of adversity here. But again, they've got to find a way to do it, and right now they're not doing it. They've got to find a way. Other teams are getting it done with their backup quarterbacks and their third string quarterbacks. They're finding ways to do it, and I think that just goes to show that the Steelers are not equipped for that properly, and that's a problem that they need to look at in the offseason. And this is kind of an interesting comment. Mark asks, how much of these inside linebacker injuries on Omar Khan? He did sign Holcomb and Alexander, players with injury history. The Cole Holcomb injury, from what I remember, was kind of a freak accident thing, like the one with the Steelers. So that one's not. I think the times where you start to get really concerned about injuries and injury history is a lot of soft tissue injuries, a lot of hamstring pulls, a lot of groin pulls, that kind of stuff, a lot of back muscle injuries, obliques and stuff like that. And I think those are the types of injuries you really kind of watch for with injury history, because that kind of goes to show, okay, how well does the player take care of his body, so on and so forth. When you look at like the types of injuries, that absolutely plays a role. And then with Quan Alexander, you were taking a guy which was I mean, he was a late addition in training camp. Like this was not, they were bringing him in to hope that he would possibly be something, which is exactly what it was.
Yeah.
He wasn't initially part of their plan at inside linebacker. They just added him. They'd be like, let's just add more depth. And if he turns into something, great, awesome. Low risk, high reward type situation. That's exactly what it was.
And he did turn into something, by the way.
Yeah, he did. They got the high reward out of that because they took almost no risk. They didn't give him a hefty contract. So I don't put that on Omar Khan at all. I don't question those signings at all. I don't think. I mean, look at the Bears. I mean, the Bears threw a boatload of money at inside linebacker in free agency, and what are they doing right now? I think inside linebacker is a position that's not worth investing a ton of money. It's just not. You don't need that inside linebacker group. If you can draft and develop a couple of, one or two star inside linebacker guys who can fly over the field, most recent example for the Steelers is Ryan Shazier. Phenomenal. Great. You have that guy. You have him on the cheap for 4, maybe 5 years, depending on where you draft him. If you outside of that, man, don't invest a ton of money there. There are too many other positions that require a lot of dollars in a salary cap league.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A Steeler Girl 808 says, is Kenny trending to play anymore this season? I'll put it to you this way. He practiced in a limited capacity all week. So he was out on the field at least doing some individual work, stretching, getting on that ankle, working that ankle out in a practice setting, in a practice capacity, and not just a rehab capacity. So that being said, think of it this way. He was limited all week. And even though Mike Tomlin on Monday said Mason Rudolph is going to start, there was still, like, in the back of the mind, an idea of, well, could they activate 8 and have him back up Mason? Or could 8 be activated and he could be designated as the third quarterback? Like, there was somewhat in the back of the mind a thought of that, at least for me. One of the fellow beat writers, Chris, would laugh at this, theorized that Mason, if the Steelers were in a position to win in the fourth quarter, Mason would get him there and he would get sat for KP, and Kenny would have the fourth quarter magic to employ. So that's not going to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But
no.
But that was in the back of the mind, at least, that Kenny was going to be able to play. And when Mike Tomlin said the door was ajar, he means that. He doesn't just say that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they gave Kenny a chance this week to accelerate the rehab, so to speak. Obviously, he practiced all 3 days this week, albeit in limited capacities. So for Saturday, obviously not. But for next week in Seattle, I wouldn't rule it out at all. I would think it's very possible. Unless Mason throws for like 350 and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, I wouldn't count on that. So no, I would expect Kenny Pickett to play as early as next week. If not, it depends on the seedings and stuff. Maybe he plays week 18 in Baltimore, or if they're totally out of it, maybe they make the call to sit him, although I don't think they would do that.
No, and Matt asks that question pretty much. What do you do next week if Mason looks good and Kenny's ready? This is still got to be about what you do next season, regardless of what the Steelers do for the remainder of this year. You have to get it does the Steelers no good to sit Kenny Pickett. If he can play, he needs to play. Regardless, this is they need answers, and as difficult as it is to get answers with this offense, with the state of this offense, with firing your offensive coordinator, and with being in the very, very much in the interim phase between coordinators, you still need Kenny Pickett to be on the field, because I still want to see how much can he rise above circumstances. And I think that's something that we need to see from all players. But as I talked about with Joe Burrow, the most important position on the field is quarterback. I want to see Kenny Pickett play, even though I still have my doubts about him as a potential franchise quarterback. He still needs to play 100%. That, to me, that's not a question. If Kenny's healthy, he needs to play.
Frankie asked, if things go south quickly on Saturday, do we ride with Mason the whole game? I think this is Mason Rudolph's game no matter what. You think of it this way. Mitch played so bad last Saturday that Mike Tomlin sat him with 2 minutes to go in the game out of reach with a 2-score deficit. That's how bad it got for Mitch Trubisky. And Mike Tomlin said, that's it. We're putting Mason in. And then on Monday, when Mike Tomlin spoke with reporters, including myself, he said, we're playing Mason. So I don't think that those two events would have lined up if they weren't going to go back to Mitch Trubisky. I think this is going to be Mason Rudolph's game through and through, injury pending. The only way that Mitch gets in is if Mason gets hurt. B-Phil asks, here's a question. Will Trubisky be let go of at the end of the year? Now, he does have 1 year left on his deal, but there is, I believe it's only like $2.3 million in dead money if they do let him go, which is a little under half of what they would have to pay him to stay in Pittsburgh. So if they get rid of Trubisky, it almost sounds like, depending on the plan, it almost sounds like it would be more cost efficient to just dump him and then sign a cheaper veteran backup, or go to the draft for 2 more guys or 1 more guy, depending on what else happens with the position. Do you have that contract?
I have his contract pulled up. So remember, he got the extension this past offseason.
Like 8 months ago, he got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so he is actually under contract for the next 2 seasons, for 24 and 25.
That's right. Thank you.
His cap hit next season would be 7.5. His cap hit in 25 would be 8.3. If they straight up cut him next year, they would let's see. They would save a little less than $3 million.
Okay.
Total. Yeah, so his dead cap next season, no matter what, he is his cap hit no matter what next year, whether he's on the team or not, will be at least 4.6 million. Whew. So if they cut him, obviously if they kept him, then his cap hit, being on the roster, would be 7.5. If they cut him, it would be down. They would save 2.9 million. So you're not eating any money, to get rid of them, but that's still going to be $4.6 million of your cap, going toward Mitch Trubisky no matter what. So that's just part of it. So obviously the best way I would go about that would be to try to find a trade partner, and not saying that they would get one. I'm just saying if you can get a bag of peanuts for them. I'm talking about get a 7th round pick 3 years from now. Do it, because at that point, you're just doing it to clear cap space. It's not anything about trying to get something in return. You're trying to get trying to clear the cap space.
Yep, you want the money back.
Yeah, even if you have to eat a little bit of that, if you can still save some of it, that you wouldn't be paying in dead money, that'd be it would behoove the Steelers to entertain that avenue, just because, and really what will ultimately decide whether Mitch Trubisky's there next year or not is who the offensive coordinator is.
Of course.
Because the offensive coordinator is going to obviously have a big hand in who the quarterback is, whether it's Kenny Pickett, whether they just go with the same Kenny, Mitch, Mason group, or if they decide to go free agency route or draft route or both or whatever. So
Frankie asks, is your first rounder an O-lineman again? I think it totally entirely depends on the new offensive coordinator is. We talked about this, and we'll talk way more about this, obviously, once the offseason begins, potentially January 8th. Who the new offensive coordinator is dictates everything, and that includes the quarterback position. Now, if Mike Tomlin's going to be the head coach of this team next year, which for the sake of conversation right now, we'll say he is, Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney would interview an offensive coordinator, and they have two options. Number one, they could say, what's your vision for the quarterback position? Number two, they could say, we have Kenny Pickett. We want you to use Kenny Pickett. In fact, you're going to use Kenny Pickett. How do you plan on using Kenny Pickett? And they can hire a guy that has the best plan for Kenny Pickett, which is completely fair to do because
2 more years plus a third possible, if you exercise a 5th-year option. So
you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. So this is an advantage to take. If Kenny Pickett is truly in Art Rooney's vision, the guy for this franchise, he's going to pick the best offensive coordinator to get the best out of him. And that's what the goal should be into the offseason, because then you won't have to burn a first-round pick on Jane Daniels or any of the other quarterbacks. You could go get offensive line help. You could go get a guy that can help Kenny pick it out, whether it's a weapon or, heck, go get somebody on the defense that they still need, because they do have a lot of holes to fill on the defense now.
Yeah.
So it entirely depends. And we talked also about, is Kenny tied to Mike Tomlin? And that's a whole other thing in and of itself. So a lot of draft questions, like some teams right now that are either eliminated from the postseason or that are very damn close, like the Steelers are.
If they lose Saturday, they will be.
Right. Well, are talking in some facets about the draft. It's really hard to talk about the draft right now from a Steelers perspective because we don't know who, number one, for sure, the offensive coordinator is going to be. And number two, if the possibility is even out there that Mike Tomlin could be traded or fired. We don't know any of that yet. So it's hard to talk about draft stuff right now at this stage.
There's one thing that I can say with certainty going into the draft, and this kind of came up in my live cues yesterday a little bit because there was a question about, do you try to, I understand. I'm not faulting whoever asked it, about, kind of playing revisionist history about like, first round pick, doesn't go to a running back. And so it should have taken Creed Humphrey over Najee Harris, so on and so forth. That was a topic then. It's still a topic now. The only thing I can chalk that up to really is, and I wasn't covering the team at the time, so I'm not going to pretend to know what was going on there. But what I will say is, the last couple of years, or I'd say even few years of the Kevin Colbert era, the Steelers definitely started trading more for need than they did taking the best player available. And that is a major, major problem. And I don't care what the Steelers say. They've always said they're taking best player available. Your actions speak louder than your words. You traded up to get Devin Bush. Okay. You took a running back in the first round whenever, that's typically not the way to go. You got to take the best player in the draft. And for example, if the Steelers go into this draft, regardless of what they've done in free agency, regardless of what they've done with the offensive coordinator position or what they've done with Mike Tomlin, if they go into the draft at whatever position and one of those franchise quarterbacks falls into their lap, one of those potential franchise quarterbacks falls into their lap, you're telling me you're not going to take them? I have a hard time passing that up. What if you pass on another Ben Roethlisberger? What happens if you pass on another, or it's another Dan Marino situation? You can't pass on a guy. And if you don't need a quarterback, or if one of those quarterbacks isn't there because the Steelers don't have a legitimate quarterback where it's like, we definitely don't need that position. So that's what I'm saying. But if it's if none of those quarterbacks are there and you have another best player available, whether it's at center, tackle, whatever position, man, like you got to take best player available. You have to.
Telling you what, we're getting a lot of good questions today in the chat. Maybe that's a thing we do tomorrow on a Football Friday. Is just take questions, whether it's about the Steelers, the NFL, about Christmas, about anything. I think we could do that on a Friday, but we'll answer a few more to end the show out today. Teresa asks, what's the cap look like this offseason? seems to be a lot of quality free agents hitting the market. Now, this is according to SpotRack. Looking at the 2024 cap tracker, the Steelers are 24th in terms of cap allotment. They're currently in the red with next year's salary cap, just a little bit. So they're going to have to move some money. They're going to have to move some players around in order to clear some money. And Matt asked, do you think they pick up next year's option on Najee Harris? I'm starting to be inclined that they're not going to. I don't think they do. I don't think he's going to be merited the money that a fifth-year option would get from being a first-round pick. I'm starting to become a little less inclined to say yes on that, on Najee Harris.
Yeah, so the Najee thing is still a bit murky to me because, again, I want to see who the offensive coordinator is that they hire, because I think the offensive coordinator will definitely play a role in that. When it comes to cap stuff, I remember going into last season, or last offseason, like going into it, a lot of people would do the same thing. They would go to Over the Cap or Spot Tracker and be like, hey, the Steelers it doesn't look like they have a lot of cap space. Well, once we actually start getting into the analysis, we start looking at like, okay, what players are going to be gone, what players are still there, what contracts can be restructured, so on and so forth. Like, we knew last year going into the Steelers were going to have a decent amount of cap space. Now, I haven't done a lot of studying the cap just yet. Again, I'm still in regular season mode. I'm not in off-season mode yet. So I haven't started looking at the cap situation for next year. But just because they show to be in the red right now does not mean that they're going to be strapped to the cap. You can't be strapped to the cap when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. You just can't. No. There are definitely ways that you can move money around. Even some of the guys who signed some of the bigger contracts, even last offseason, there are ways to create cap space. And if there's anything Omar Khan is really, really good at, it's working the cap. He knows how to do it. So,
yeah,
not worried about
that. Teresa says she has an inkling that Andy Weidel was window dressing. I don't think Andy Weidel was window dressing for really anything. I think he had a pretty decent say in what went on. And I think a pretty good point of evidence is Isaac Seumalo and Nate Herbig coming in. Those are two guys that Weidel obviously knew in Philadelphia. Seumalo obviously has won a Super Bowl. So those are two guys that have familiarity with there. I think Weidel had at least some part in helping construct this roster.
Well, and like in terms of the draft prep, Andy Weidel built the draft board.
Yes.
Like, that was his role. Like, so now he didn't necessarily make the decisions based on, he builds the draft board. And then when it comes to the ultimate decision, that is the triune head above all everything, for every Steelers decision between Art Rooney, Mike Tomlin, and Omar Khan. So, but Andy Weidel's fingerprints are definitely on the draft, and you can kind of see it with the way the draft played out. Taking Broderick Jones in the first round, taking Keanu Benton with their second round pick. I think Teresa asked, how much influence does Tomlin have on that board? Everybody has influence in terms of, it's not just one guy calling the shots on every single thing. There really is a teamwork effort to everything when it comes to free agency, when it comes to the draft. I mean, it's not just, when I say Andy Weidel built the board, that doesn't mean that Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan and Art Rooney said it's all 100% yours and absolutely nobody else can have a say in it. No, the scouting department has a say. Mike Tomlin has a say. Omar Khan everybody has a little bit of a say, but Andy Weidel is the ultimate one who built the board. And then again, when it comes to the actual decisions made, if there were some guy based off of how their board looks, when they get to a certain pick, it might be a situation where they're like, listen, it might not be this guy, it might be this guy because maybe certain position, whatever. I'm not in the room. I'm not going to pretend to know what that board looks like.
And let's not forget, by the way, Alex Highsmith extension kicks in next year. So he'll be making in the roundabout of $11 million. Allen Robinson's due $11,917.5 on his contract, and I'm not expecting that.
I'm pretty sure that's a massive saving.
I'm not expecting that to be paid in full. Somebody asked who makes the most money here in terms of the Steelers. The answer is TJ Watt. Unequivocally, TJ Watt. Next year his cap hit's going to be in the roundabout of $30 million. And then Cam Hayward's going to be around 22. So
Allen Robinson is probably the epitome of in terms of a cap casualty player next year. His cap hit next year would be 11.9 million, with dead cap only being 1.9. That is literally saving $10 million immediately by saying goodbye to Allen Robinson. That is the easiest decision in the history of decisions to take the was a Capital One commercials. I mean, like that's an easy one.
Chooks and Corford, by the way, do 11.8 next year. So we'll see with Chooks. I didn't expect us to get into contracts today, but here we are. The Steelers play the Bengals Saturday, as we've been talking about in brief. No Kenny Pickett for Pittsburgh. I guess tomorrow we're going to do more Q&A because there's been a lot of it today. And I like it, quite frankly. So how about tomorrow on Football Friday? We'll do about 20 minutes Q&A. We'll do 10 minutes of picks and a recap of the game and start to get into the mindset of the Bengals. I don't really have a final thought for today. I'm kind of spent on them, to be honest, right now.
No, it's I got a lot of thoughts out yesterday on stuff, and I'm so over it. I even got a late question on the George Pickens stuff in my live queues. That was yesterday, but it was this morning. So I gave a very, very short answer, and I was like, listen, I'm spent on the George Pickens conversation, especially after the way yesterday went. I'm done. I'm done talking about it. So, listen, we're 4 days from Christmas.
I think both of us are on holiday brain right now.
Yeah, it's just like, listen, obviously there's a football game this weekend, but listen, 4 days, 4 days from Christmas. Regardless of how you celebrate the holiday season, man, everybody just try to be joyful, try to be happy. Show some kindness, show some love. Yeah, man, I'm excited to just enjoy the rest of the days leading up to Christmas because my kids are looking forward to it, and that's what I'm going to take enjoyment out of.
By the way, I think this was an easy guess, but we're not going to have a show Christmas Day. We're not doing the show Christmas Day. No. So enjoy your holiday with your loved ones. Obviously, Christmas Eve is Sunday, so there would be no show anyway. So no show on Monday, but we'll be back tomorrow. Q&A. Bring some questions. Write them down. Put them on a napkin. Put them in your head. Wherever you got to put them. We'll answer them tomorrow. We'll do that for about 20 minutes, and then we'll spend the last 10 minutes of tomorrow's show on the Bengals, and we'll give picks and all that fun stuff on a Football Friday. So for now, on this Thursday, December 21st, 2023, DK and Ramon, the Ramon Foster Show, returns in 30 minutes. You'll want to stay tuned for that, I'm sure. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. This has been the Southside Beat. Have a good day, everybody. Cheers.